Sometimes the loudest move you can make is no move at all. People expect noise. They expect outrage, backlash, defense. That's how they gauge your strength, by how loud you roar back. But what they never expect is silence. Complete, calm, unwavering silence. Because silence unnerves people. It's not passive, it's a presence so rooted in power that it doesn't need to perform. And that's where the game changes. Because the moment you stop reacting, you flip the dynamic. You stop dancing to their chaos. You stop feeding their drama. And instead, you become the mirror, quiet, still, unflinching. And the truth is, most people can't stand to see themselves that clearly. You want to know how people destroy themselves? You don't need to scream at them. You don't need to expose them. You just stop responding. You let them run out of lies, out of stories, out of manipulations. And when there's no more audience to convince, no one left to argue with, they're left face to face with themselves. And that's where their unraveling begins. Because some people survive off of your energy, off your attention. Your reactions fuel their control. When you pull that away, when you go quiet, they scramble. They fill the silence with projection, assumptions, spirals. They say things like, "Why are you being weird?" Or, "You've changed." No, you just stopped leaking your power into dead conversations. You just stopped letting them occupy space they never earned. And that shakes them, because silence removes the shield of deflection. Now their words echo. Now their intentions get exposed without you having to say a single thing, because you're no longer in the frame. They're arguing with shadows. And the more they talk, the more they reveal. The longer they try to bait you, the more obvious their desperation becomes. People who thrive off of chaos will always try to drag you back into it. They'll poke, they'll provoke, they'll play victim when you don't give them the war they were hoping for. But silence is your declaration of peace. Not peace as in weakness, but peace as in, I'm no longer wasting my time in low vibrations. I'm not arguing with people committed to misunderstanding me. I'm not proving myself to anyone who already decided who I am. You want real power? Learn to watch people fold under the weight of their own falsehoods. Let them show the world exactly who they are when no one's saving them from themselves. You don't need to correct their story. The truth doesn't panic. The truth doesn't beg to be seen. It just waits. And when the fog lifts, when the dust settles, when all the noise dies down, what's left standing is always real. You, your energy, your decisions, your silence. And by then, they've already lost. Not because you destroyed them, but because they revealed themselves in the absence of your reaction. That's the art of saying nothing. It's not about suppressing your voice. It's about choosing when to use it and knowing that sometimes your greatest power is restraint. You don't have to win the argument. You don't have to justify the boundary. You don't have to prove the betrayal. You just have to stop showing up where your value is being drained. Let your absence do the talking. Let your peace do the pushing. Let their own patterns be the evidence. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. And when you master the art of saying nothing, you'll start seeing exactly who was real, who was playing games, and who crumbles when the echo they once fed off finally goes quiet. People who manipulate, gaslight, provoke, or play power games rely on one thing: your reaction. They thrive off it. They use it to control the narrative. The moment you react, defend yourself, explain yourself, lose your temper, even just raise your voice, you give them a lever to pull. Now they can flip the script. Now they can say you're emotional, you're dramatic, you're unstable, and suddenly they're no longer the aggressor. They're the victim. That's the game. They push just enough to get a rise out of you. And when you give it to them, they twist it, weaponize it, and pretend like they're just responding to your chaos. But what happens when you don't play? What happens when you stop reacting entirely? Silence strips them of control. It's like cutting the strings of a puppet master. Now they're left talking to themselves, performing for an audience that doesn't exist. And the panic sets in, because without your reaction, they can't manipulate the optics. They can't paint you as the problem. They can't hide behind your response. You've taken away their oxygen, and now they're gasping for control. Understand this clearly. Not reacting is not weakness. It's control. It's discipline. It's emotional intelligence turned into armor. Anyone can explode. Anyone can argue. Anyone can match chaos with chaos. But to sit in the storm, quiet, calm, still, knowing you could burn it all down but choosing not to, that's real power. That's untouchable. And here's the deeper truth. When you stay silent, they start revealing everything. Their insecurity, their projection, their motives. It all spills out. They'll over-explain, over-post, over-talk. Because silence creates pressure, and only those with nothing to hide can sit in it comfortably. Everyone else? They panic. They scramble. They destroy themselves. You're not ignoring them. You're watching, observing, gathering data. Because every reaction they don't get from you, they'll try to create somewhere else. And that desperation speaks louder than any argument ever could. You're not absent. You're present in a way they can't handle. You're withholding the one thing they need to keep control over you, your energy. So the next time someone tries to bait you into a conflict you've outgrown, remember this. Reacting means stepping back into the arena. But you've already left. You've already elevated. You're no longer interested in being right to someone who's committed to misunderstanding you. Let them talk. Let them spin. Let them dig. Your silence isn't approval. It's a boundary. Your stillness isn't fear. It's a decision. And your lack of response, that's the loudest message you'll ever send. The truth doesn't need a defense team. It doesn't need to scream. It doesn't need to chase. The truth is patient. It waits. It watches. And eventually it rises, slowly, silently, but undeniably. That's why you don't need to argue with liars. You don't need to run after people trying to twist your story. You don't need to waste energy trying to convince anyone of who you are. The truth always finds its way to the surface because lies are heavy and they sink under the weight of their own inconsistencies. But the truth? It floats, always. So many people feel the urge to speak up, to fight back, to prove their innocence or their value or their version of the story. But every time you try to explain yourself to someone who's already decided what they want to believe, you lose. Not because you're wrong, but because they're not listening. They don't want clarity. They want control. And the more you push, the more power you give them. That's why silence is sacred. Because in the quiet, the real story unfolds. Not through arguments, not through confrontation, but through time. Time exposes everything. Intentions, motives, patterns. The person who lied will lie again. The person who manipulated you will manipulate someone else. The person who tried to paint you as the villain will eventually run out of new villains and have to face their own reflection. You don't need to rush the process. You just need to trust it. Because here's the secret. Truth always reveals itself, not when you shout it, But when you live it, when you continue to walk in integrity, when you stay consistent, when your actions align with who you are, not what they said you were, and while they're busy building narratives, you're building results. You're building peace. You're building a life so full of clarity that eventually the lies can't survive inside it. There will come a day when everything aligns, when people see what you saw, when their mask slips, when their charm fades, when their story cracks open and the real version spills out. And in that moment, you won't need to say, "I told you so." You won't need to celebrate their collapse. You'll simply nod because you knew. You knew the whole time. You just chose the higher road. You chose silence. You chose growth. And that choice became your protection. Don't let people rush you into reactions. Don't let the pressure to clear your name pull you out of your peace. The ones who matter, who see clearly, will never need an explanation. And the ones who demand one, they were never trying to understand you. They were trying to control the way others see you. So let them talk. Let them spin. Let them dig deeper. While you elevate, they unravel. Because the truth doesn't need your voice to be heard. It just needs your alignment. And when the dust settles, when their chaos burns out, your silence will still be standing, strong, steady, unmoved, and the truth, it'll be right there beside you. You don't have to expose anyone. You just have to stay still long enough for them to expose themselves. The more someone talks, especially when they're trying to overcompensate, justify, or manipulate, the more they leak. Every sentence becomes a window. Every over-explained lie, every dramatic rant, every sudden shift in tone, it all reveals more than they realize. And that's the beauty of silence. It's a stage where the other person performs without realizing they're the only one in the spotlight. People who move in dishonesty can't handle silence. It's not just awkward for them, it's threatening, because silence demands reflection. It invites truth. It makes them sit in their own mess. So instead of facing that stillness, they fill it with excuses, with accusations, with victimhood. They talk too much. They reach too far. They start tripping over their own stories. And you just listen. Or better yet, you observe. No need to clap back. No need to correct them. Just watch. Because silence gives you something that speaking never can. Clarity. While they're busy reacting to a version of you that only exists in their head, you're collecting data. You're seeing exactly who they are when they think they're in control. And once you've seen that clearly, you can never unsee it. There's power in restraint, in not matching their energy, in not giving them the performance they're expecting. Because people like that want chaos. They want a reaction. They want you angry, desperate, defensive, anything to make you look unstable so they can feel justified. But when you don't give it to them, when you stay calm, measured, intentional, it unsettles them. Their performance starts to crack. They say too much. They reveal their real intentions. Their ego kicks in. They try to win in front of others. But the more they try to dominate the narrative, the more transparent they become. Because truth doesn't need volume. It just needs contrast. And the contrast between their noise and your calm becomes impossible to ignore. The longer you stay quiet, the more they unravel. Not because you're punishing them, but because you're letting them speak. You're giving them the rope, and they don't even realize they're tying the knot. And that knot, it's made of every lie, every contradiction, every impulsive outburst. Eventually, it tightens. around their own credibility, around their own image, around their own story. So let them talk. Let them get loud. Let them overplay their hand. You don't have to match their energy. You just have to let them run out of it. The truth doesn't always need to be forced. Sometimes it just needs a little space, a little silence, a little time. And when the noise fades, when their performance ends and the mask slips, you'll still be standing, quiet, calm, clear. And the world, it'll finally see what you saw the whole time. There's a moment in every battle when silence becomes the loudest statement you can make. Not because you've given up, not because you're weak, but because you've realized the war isn't worth your energy, because real strength isn't proven through constant confrontation. It's shown through your ability to walk away with your dignity intact, your peace undisturbed, and your value untouched. That's where the real power is, in your absence. See, people who thrive on control, chaos, and manipulation don't fear your anger. They fear your indifference. Because anger still means you care. It means they still have access to your mind, your heart, your attention. But indifference, that's a locked door. That's a final chapter. That's the moment they realize the story no longer includes them. And that's what breaks them. Not your words, your silence, not your revenge, your exit. You don't need to unmask them. Life has a way of doing that all on its own. The people they try to fool will eventually see the patterns, the games, the cracks in their carefully constructed image. And the louder they get trying to prove they're right, the more obvious it becomes they're lying. Meanwhile, you're already gone, not just physically, but energetically. You've detached, you've elevated, you've closed the door so gently they didn't even hear it, until they turned around and realized they're alone in the echo chamber they built. And by then, it's too late. You're no longer explaining. You're evolving. You're no longer reacting. You're rebuilding. You're no longer proving. You're protecting. You've stopped engaging with people who drain you and started investing in people who see you. You've stopped trying to correct their false version of you and started living so fully, so freely, so loudly in your truth that no lie about you can survive. That's the final word. Peace. Not the peace that comes from everything being perfect, but the peace that comes from knowing you don't have to participate in every fire someone tries to drag you into. You don't have to scream over the noise. You don't have to fight for a seat at a table you've already outgrown. Sometimes the best closure is no closure, just silence, just a life well lived, just distance, just the undeniable contrast between who they said you were and who you actually became. Let your peace speak. Let your absence be the message. Let your growth be the revenge. Because in the end, the people who once underestimated you, disrespected you, or tried to break you won't be able to reach you, not because they're blocked, but because you've risen so far above the games that they can't even find the entrance to your new world. And that is the art of saying nothing.